Hi, welcome to True Creeps, where the stories are true and the creeps are real. We'll cover stories from grotesque gore to the possibly plausible paranormal, to horrifying history, to tense and terrible true crime, and everything else that goes bump in the night. We're your hosts, Amanda, and I'm Lindsay, and we want you to join us while we creep. We cover mature topics. Listener discretion is advised. Hello, everyone. Today, we are going to be talking about a haunted hotel located in Austin, Texas, called the Driskill, and it is said to be Texas's most haunted hotel. I was lucky enough to go visit this place a few months ago, and it is somewhere I think everyone should go and visit their ghosts because it is very spooky.
The photos are stunning, too.
Yeah, it is a very pretty place. So for my birthday earlier this year, my best friend Madison actually bought me plane tickets to go see her in Austin. And while I was there, we got to take the coolest ghost tour I've ever gone on. And it was done by Haunted ATX. And we got to ride around the whole city in a hearse.
Ooh.
And we visited a bunch of spooky places. And it was really cool because we got to go in them.
Oh, I like that.
A lot of them, when you drive, you're like, oh, there it is. With the exception of one, we were able to go into all the places and learn about the history and all the stuff that happened there. And they were very knowledgeable. So one of the stops on it was actually the Driskill. Maddie, who was our guide, was fantastic. So I wanted to give her a shout out. So if you ever book one with them, request her because she was great.
I love it. So let's get into the history first. The hotel was built by Jesse Lincoln Driskill, who wanted to build a luxurious hotel to rival others that he had found in places like New York, Chicago, or St. Louis. He was a wealthy cattle baron and a businessman. I just love the idea of like a cattle baron.
Right?
So before he moved with his family to Austin, he had made and lost a fortune during the Civil War selling cattle to the Confederacy. So like just to get an idea of who he was. So due to this, they gave him the title of Colonel.
We don't love him, but the story is interesting.
We're not a huge fan of this guy.
Yeah.
So the grand opening of the hotel was in 1886. It cost about $400,000 to build. And also, during the same time, the state capitol building was being constructed. And for a time, since this was before the state capitol was built, the state senate would meet at the hotel and used it as their temporary headquarters. It's an interesting little bit of history, you know?
Yeah.
So about 2 weeks later, in January of 1887, they held the first inaugural ball for Texas Governor Sol Russ. This created a tradition where many other governors also had their inaugural balls held at the hotel.
Now, this is a bit different than the other hotels that we've covered, but in May of 1887, the hotel was forced to close. Now, it wasn't due to a fire like we always talk about, but it was due to another hotel taking all their staff away.
Oh.
So the general manager, the head waiter, the bartender, and more left to go work at the Galveston Beach Hotel, which is located in another spooky Texas destination that we've already covered.
Mm-hmm.
This also may have been caused because, this is wild, Driskill actually lost his hotel in a fucking high-stakes poker game. Isn't that insane?
Can you imagine having put a business on the line money, like, to gamble away like that? Woof.
I mean, that just says how insane he was, like, with gambling and that sort of thing, right?
Uh-huh.
He would bet all that he had left
Mm-hmm.
in a poker game.
Ugh.
So, again, this guy. And it sounded like the hotel was essentially bankrupt at the time. So, like I said, I think it was his last thing that he had when he lost it. And so the employees leaving, I gather, is because he couldn't pay them.
Makes sense.
So they like went to find more work.
Mm-hmm.
And so Driskill loved to drink and gamble. So all of his money was gone. Luckily, though, it was able to reopen when the winner of the game took over. Now, the winner is also kind of funny.
I find this very funny. Very funny. Because he could have been just like, it's fine. You know, but he wasn't. Okay, please continue.
No. So in May of 1888, the new owner, which was the colonel's brother-in-law, his name was Doc Day, was now the owner of the hotel and, made sure that it was opened again. He hosted at this time the dedication of the state's new Capitol building at the hotel. So big deal.
Could you imagine those like family gatherings? He's like, come to the hotel. We'll host Thanksgiving.
Yeah. I thought it was funny, like, that they kept the name, though. I don't know if that was to rub it in his face, like, I have your hotel, or if it was to honor him a little. I don't know.
This is only like 2 years after it opened, right? Like, he hasn't had the hotel for that long.
No.
My initial thought was like, oh, maybe he didn't want to like ruin traditions of like other governors having their inaugural balls there. But like, that's not even on the mind. Like, the first guy's still in his term. Like, it's not even 2 years and he's lost his, geez, woof, man.
Yeah. So
Ugh.
funny. And I loved that, like, a lot of places skip that part. And I was like, this is the most interesting thing to me.
Yeah, as far as the history, yeah.
Yeah. So then a couple years later, in May of 1890, Colonel Driskill dies from a stroke. And some say that he was just so heartbroken after losing his hotel, which I guess is kind of sad, but like, you bet it in a game.
Yeah.
A few months later, the hotel purchased a life-sized portrait of him to hang up in the hotel. And it's actually still there. It's between where there's this big staircase and it splits, and it's in the middle of the staircase. And it hauntingly like watches you. It's very creepy.
Yeah, that's a big fucking portrait. So over the years, ownership has changed so many times, like most haunted hotels. But Doc traded the hotel for a California ranch and vineyard and some cash. Another notable ownership change was in 1895 when it was purchased by Major George R. Littlefield for $106,000. Again, remember, it took $400,000 to build it back in the day.
Yeah.
So he was also a cattle baron, a banker, and he was the president of the Texas Rangers. At this time, he vowed that the hotel would never close again. And to ensure that, he spent over $60,000 to renovate it. He added electric lighting, steam heating, 28 lavatories and bathtubs, and electric fans in every room. Woo-wee. And I think it's interesting that he had to do this much of a renovation, considering it had only been open 9 years.
Yeah, but I think it's just like technology was changing so much.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. It's just like, it's so interesting that like it was built to be a luxurious and fancy hotel.
Yeah.
And then not even a decade later, it's completely outdated.
Right.
Because all this new stuff happened. So Littlefield also opened a bank in the lobby.
He was a banker.
As with any good hotel, I guess. Yeah, but like you could be a banker and not want to bank in your lobby. Like,
I think it was like convenient.
also, like when someone says someone's a banker, what that tells me is that you work in finance, which means that like technically I'm a banker. I'm not going to build a vault in my home.
Why not?
I mean, it does sound actually like kind of cool, but like not because of like my association with working at a bank. But anyway, the vault is still there today and you can go inside. So the hotel continued to change over the years, being purchased, occasionally renovated, then sold again. And there's also some notable events and changes that happened between all that ownership change, like a controversial meeting held by the Daughters of the Texas Republic to determine what would happen to the Alamo. In the early 1900s, a spa and barber shop were added facing 6th Street. And a popular attraction here was the healing sulfur waters or Turkish baths they had to smell.
I just love the idea of like the healing waters, right? Being at like all these hotels that we talk about.
Yeah, they're like, our water's better here.
Yeah.
They also had visiting psychic healers, and you could even buy elixirs from the medicine man that was at the hotel. There were lots of political events. Governor William P. Hobby's inaugural ball was there. It was even used for political meetings. More renovations, like a new tower, were built. And then in that tower, it was built between 1928 to 1930, and it included a 12-story tower, the Driskill Bar, and circulated ice water cooling. It's almost like two buildings came together. There was the original that included the lobby, that is often referred to as the traditional side, and then the tower bar side, or what the staff refer to as the addition.
Yeah, they called them and I was like, okay, what do you call these sides? Because
yeah,
everything online is saying things differently, or they're calling it the tower, or they're calling it the annex. I even saw, and she's like, we call one the traditional side and then the other the addition, but they're both old. And I was like, okay, thank you. Yes, because when I was there, you can tell, like when you're walking the halls, you can feel the difference as to which side you're on based on like the construction in the area, like the
that makes
detail
sense.
work.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, oh, this one's older than this side.
Yeah.
And even like, I want to say it was the stairs going up on one side. You're like, oh, this is the original side for sure.
Oh, yeah.
So a few other changes. Again, there's so many ownership changes. We're not going to focus too much on that, but a few other changes in the hotel we will. Private baths were installed in 60 suites. Luxurious.
Mm-hmm.
And now meeting rooms were also created. And this one was interesting, at least to me, because of the history. And I'll say more on one of them later, but it's called the Citadel Room. And it was added to the hotel in 1929 during renovations. And it originally functioned as a private club. And it had a secret entrance during the Prohibition times. They'd be able to bring liquor in through it. There were also a lot of secret rooms throughout this place, especially because of Prohibition times, just like a lot of hotels we've talked about lately. Then in 1966 to 1982, this room was used as a men's club, and it served the political community. In 1981, Texas law prohibited members of Congress from meeting anywhere that excluded other members of Congress, which were women. It was a men's club. Women weren't allowed.
Oh, interesting.
So instead of just letting the women in, it fucking shut down.
Fucking Texas.
And it moved its functions to the bar. I was just like, what the fuck?
Fucking Texas.
They're like, no, women can be in here. But I bring that up. I have a story later when we're talking about the spooky stuff about this room. So because we're talking about meeting rooms, another room that we want to bring up is now called the Austin Boardroom. And I also thought this one was kind of funny. There's a sign outside that door that states, quote, "The west side of the hotel, as it stood in 1886, served as a women's entrance. So ladies in the day could avoid the crass language and spittoons of the cattlemen conducting business."
Look, do I want to go into a separate entrance in places? No. Do I want to avoid the spittoons of cattlemen conducting business? I absolutely do. So, but ew. Ew.
Right? So there's plaques on these doors. I took pictures because I wanted to remember which one was which. And I was like, this is so random. So then in the 1950s, the west balcony was enclosed, creating the current day Austin Boardroom. This room ended up being used for politicians, for business meetings. But I just thought the separate entrance part was interesting. Like I hadn't seen a hotel go, this is what we used it for before.
Yeah.
So I thought this one was kind of sweet too, what happened at this hotel. Lyndon B. Johnson had his first date with his future wife, Lady Bird, in the dining room of the hotel in 1934. He also awaited the results of his U.S. Senate race in the hotel in 1948, and then again, the presidential re-election results in 64. And then the hotel also, at a time, served as the headquarters for the White House Press Corps, and the suite known as the Governor's Suite today was permanently reserved for President Johnson. He loved this hotel, and he may have even stayed here even after death. We'll talk about that.
Ooh. So, in the 1970s, the hotel was almost demolished, but a Save the Driskill community was formed and raised more than $700,000 in sale. And how they did this was they sold $10 stock for the new Driskill Hotel Corporation. So it did save the hotel, and they held a big reopening gala. There were over 1,200 guests in attendance, including every Texas governor for the last 20 years. Ultimately, it has changed hands many times, gone through various upgrades and refurbishments, but it's kept its charm over the years. So, okay, we've told you a lot about Texas politicians and how much they love this fucking hotel and like how the owner had, frankly, a gambling problem, right? Like, frankly.
Yeah.
And a brother-in-law who was perhaps kind of a dick or just was like, this guy should own a hotel, you know, like one of the two, and has like a large, big ass portrait. But we haven't really talked about like murder or anything like that, right?
Nope.
So why the fuck would it be haunted? Some people blame all the renovations and changes for the activity, which is common for hotels. We've talked about this many times, how a hotel that has tragic stuff going on, it doesn't become haunted right after the tragic stuff. It's like after there's some renovation. So some people think that, but also there's several tragic and emotional events that have taken place inside of the hotel that aren't just part of its big history. So one of these things was two brides, but at different points in time, and not too much is known about the two. But here's the story. So in the 1940s, a bride supposedly took her own life in room 525 after her fiancé called off their wedding at the last minute. She had planned to marry him, then spend her honeymoon at the hotel. She hanged herself. She's been seen walking the halls in her Victorian dress, looking sad and pacing. Usually, she's seen by groups who are at the hotel for a wedding or a bachelor party. That is a fucking downer.
That's so sad. Yeah.
That is heartbreaking.
It is.
Yeah.
Now, there's been other sightings of her as well.
and a few of them happened in the ladies' room on the balcony level of the hotel. A woman went into the bathroom and her husband was waiting outside the door. An unknown woman appeared from the stall door and surprised her. So she kind of like cried out from being startled. And her husband, of course, heard her and was like, uh-oh, something's wrong. So he rushed in thinking something had happened. And when he did, he felt, quote, an invisible brush past him. So like almost like someone was like brushing his shoulder as they left.
Mm-hmm.
Later, when describing what the woman had seen at the front desk, they recognized the unknown woman as what they call bride number 1.
I just feel like maybe we give her a name.
I know. I hated it. I was like, what is her name? And like online, there's a few different names that people call her, but like nothing seemed correct.
I'm surprised that, I mean, like, we talk about a lot of haunted hotels, so we kind of assume that they're, like, well-known for their hauntedness, right? Like, that, like,
Yeah.
everyone knows about it, but the reason that we talk about them is because not everyone talks about them. But it would be interesting to have someone who was intuitive perhaps go there and try to figure out the names of these women, because bride number 1 and bride number 2, presumably, are just, we could do better than that.
We could, yes. So this poor bride was seen again in that same bathroom by another woman. And the woman went to the restroom and her friends were waiting outside for her. And then this next part really freaks me out. She saw a woman with dark hair looking up at her from under the stall door.
The scream I would have scrumped. Like, it would be so fucking real. Like, the hotel would tell stories about my scream. Like, that's how loud it would have been. And people would be like, and to this day, she's still screaming. Like, that's how
still
loud.
hear it.
Yeah, like, I just never stopped. Like, I just...
The echoes can be heard
also,
through
like,
the hallways.
Depending on, like, what you're doing, sometimes, like, as a person who has a vagina, like, you're doing personal things in the bathroom. Could you imagine, like, you're doing a personal thing and just, like, a head comes, like, looking up? I can't.
I hate it. I hate it so much.
So much.
So she asked her, she's way more calm than we would have
Hey,
been,
fucking excuse me.
what she was doing. And then the stranger just disappeared.
I have to imagine, like, what are you doing? Had to have, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah.
Or can I fucking help you? Could you fucking not? I mean, I could go on about, like, the things that I would say, none of which were, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, very demure. Very cutesy, as they're saying these days. Did you see how I did that? Very mindful.
I did. Very mindful. So, of course, like, the stranger disappeared and the woman who was in the stall didn't hear the door open or close or anything. Now, something she did remember, though, is that it all of a sudden smelled like roses in the room. When she told her friends about it, they said no one had gone in or come out of the restroom. And we're going to bring up this bathroom again later with another story, but of a different spirit.
Amanda, you could absolutely say with certainty that if you were the friend outside of the bathroom, like, you would know that something happened, because the force and energy I would, even if I didn't, like, scream in a way that never stopped, I do think that you would immediately know that something happened. Like, you would be like, something happened in that bathroom. She experienced a life-altering event in that bathroom.
Right? And honestly, there are more bathrooms. I'm not going to give everything away from the tour, but there are other places that you'll learn about if you take the tour.
So then, in 1991, another bride died, but this time it was in room 329.
And like a ton of these old stories, the room number does vary quite a bit depending on where you see this story.
Yeah. So this bride was a Houston socialite who went to the hotel after being left at the altar. But before taking her own life, she went on a massive shopping spree on her ex-fiance's credit card for a week. I fucking love that for her.
I do. Yeah.
She spent like $40,000.
I love that.
Gorgeous. You're not a Gilmore Girl person, but Ben and I are Gilmore Girl people. And there's this scene where like, the grandmother is on a shopping spree and she's like, I'll take it. And she's like, in this, because she's mad at her husband. He's like, oh, you do a shop. And she's like, well, I'll fucking show you. So they're like, we have these like glass apples and they're like $12,000. She's like, I'll take all of them. They're like, we only have 6. She's like, buy more. And like, just like dumb shit. Just like dumb shit. That's what I imagine when I see this, though. If you're also a Gilmore Girls girly, man, woman, non-binary, Gilmore Girl girly is the gender neutral term for that. But I want you to just envision that scene. Anyway, so she was seen by guests and staff carrying tons of bags to her room, presumably because, again, $40,000, it's like a lot of money.
Yeah.
That's a lot of stuff, especially like today it's a lot, but any time period before that buys you more, right? Like with inflation, that buys you like 3 apples and a steak. But anywho, so that evening she got into the tub, she put a gun to a pillow and then shot herself in the stomach. That is horrific.
That's sad, yeah.
I also just feel like you don't often hear about people killing themselves in that particular manner. Normally, just like with a gun, that's not the way that you would do that. But like, that's also a painful death.
It is.
And she wasn't discovered for 3 days. But when she was discovered, housekeepers had come in because they were concerned because they didn't see her leave the room.
Yeah, they're like, she hasn't eaten for a few days. Like, what's going on?
Yeah. So nowadays, people have seen her walking and carrying a ton of shopping bags, while other people have seen a woman walking with a gun and she'll disappear into the room doors. For that particular type of sighting, she's seen wearing her wedding dress, and it's a more modern looking dress. 2 ghost hunters from Dallas were staying the night trying to capture some ghostly activities, as ghost hunters do. And they wanted to stay on the 4th floor on the, quote, traditional side, but it was being renovated. So they had to stay on the other side of the hotel. And they went out for the night and came back around 2 a.m. And they decided to take a trip over to the other side, the closed 4th floor, to look for ghosts. After wandering the halls that were draped with plastic from the renovation, they gave up and started heading to the elevator to go back to their room. When the elevator door is open, though, a woman holding lots of packages stepped out. So she walked past the 2 women without looking them and then continued down the hall. So one of the women was like, where was she shopping at 3 a.m.? So they decided that it was weird enough to follow her to ask. They called out to her, but she ignored them and turned a corner. She then disappeared into one of the rooms. So the story says room 26, but we've seen that there's different room numbers that are said there. But interesting.
Right. Like, I think they've changed them over the years too. So it's really hard to say which room this happened in because I've heard lots of different rooms.
I would also, though, like, it's interesting if you're a ghost hunter, you have a certain idea of what you're going to see as a ghost, right? And that is like an apparition, if you will, but to see a solid person that you mistake for a person so much that you try to communicate with them.
Yes.
That would be, I think, extra jarring because you're like, no, I'm here for this, but I wasn't expecting like this.
Right. It reminds me of the Biltmore where they saw Elizabeth Short in the elevator with him. And he thought it was actually a woman standing next to him and it wasn't.
Yes.
So the women were a little freaked out. I think that they were just like feeling a little creeped out because of where they were, but they called it a night. At this point, it didn't seem like they thought that they had seen a spirit because the next morning they went to the front desk to inquire why someone was allowed to stay the night in the section of the hotel that they were denied. The staff assured them that no one was staying in that part of the hotel. And the women, from what stories say, were super insistent. They're like, no, we saw someone go there. Why does she get to stay there and not us? Take us, show us the room.
I don't love this, though. I don't love this, like, attitude towards this, like, the staff, though. Like,
right. And I don't know. That's the way that the stories online say it. I don't know if they were like, no, let us show you. You know, like,
I could also absolutely, like, you're a ghost hunter. You're there to see ghosts. You then see a ghost. You don't realize it's a ghost. So in your brain, you're like, no. Like, somebody was there. Like, somebody was for sure there because I saw a person. It couldn't have been a ghost because I, a ghost hunter, would know that. No. It had to be a person. Let me, like, you see what I'm saying? Where it's like,
right.
It's a, no. I didn't experience what I thought I experienced, even though I came here for this and didn't realize that was this.
Exactly. And like this story, I tried to put together a lot of different people telling this story and put it into one, but some things are a little different here and there. But anyway, so they're insistent about seeing this room. And so the staff's like, well, let's go up there and look. When they go to the room, they open the door and there's not even a bed in this room. There's nothing. It's just a bunch of plastic from the renovation. And that's it. There's nothing in the room.
Oh.
So no one was staying there. And then I'm sure they were like, oh gosh, what did we see?
Yeah.
And like I mentioned, this story has been told over and over again. It's changed a little bit. The reason why the girls were there, their interaction with the supposed ghost, if they were asking about her bags or if they were asking her, like, is the renovations bothering you while you're staying at the hotel? Again, it varies a lot, but either way, very creepy story.
Yeah.
So while I was there, not on the tour, but I'll talk about what I was doing before the tour, but I saw an employee heading to 525 to clean it. So I was like, hey, can we chat for a minute?
Yeah, of course.
The person was very, very sweet. She was so nice. And she mentioned that sometimes that room is really strange, but the room that she didn't care to go to was actually room 539.
Tell me more.
And according to her, people in that room have left crying and have checked out early. And I scoured like Yelp reviews, everything I could think of to see specifically what happens in 539, and I couldn't find anything. So I don't know why it's haunted, but I mean, if staff's like, yeah, that's the one that's weird, interesting.
Yeah.
So let's get back to that bathroom we were talking about before. The unsettling bathroom.
The one where someone put their head underneath the door?
Yeah.
That one?
Don't love it. Don't love it. I don't love this either. So apparently, some people see a severed head in there. And there's not much on specifics, but there is a story that perhaps a sex worker was murdered in that bathroom. She was being chased in there by an angry customer, and he decapitated her with what is said to be a razor blade, which I'm like, how does that work? So I'm not sure if that's possible, but maybe it wasn't like a full decapitation.
I just don't think you can do that much. Like, you could kill someone with it.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to, like, go through any bone.
Exactly.
Like, not even, like, a lot. Like, any.
That's why I question that story a little bit. I'm like, well, like someone could have died in there, and maybe because she had a head injury, someone like sees the neck and head area and not the rest. I don't know. But supposedly that's what people see there. Now, remember when I brought up the Citadel room earlier too, and how its origins were just men were allowed in. So before the tour, earlier in the day, Madison and I went and had brunch at the cafe at the hotel, which is stunning, and I feel like everyone should check it out. And the food is actually really good. But after brunch, we wandered around the hotel a bit and found ourselves outside the Citadel room. So we, of course, journeyed in before reading the little plaque outside just to see what was inside. We're like, oh, what is this? I was thinking like ballroom is what I was expecting. Not a ballroom, more like a meeting room. So we're inside the room. And while I was in there, I was like, even told Madison, like, I feel like someone is upset that we're in here. Like, I feel like everyone's staring at me like, why are you here? And I didn't see anything weird. I just felt like I was very unwanted in that room. And I even told her, like, before we walked out, I was like, I feel like we're not supposed to be in here. Not because we're actually not supposed to be in here, but like,
energetically, you feel like you are not supposed to be there.
Yeah. And so when we went outside, we saw that plaque. Originally, it was like a no women allowed type situation. I was like, oh, I'm actually not supposed to be in there. So perhaps one of the dude ghosts was like, ew, why is she here?
I mean, maybe.
She's not allowed to be in politics.
Yeah. The next story may be the most discussed story of the hotel, and it involves the devastating death of a 4-year-old named Samantha Houston, who was a senator's daughter. Now, a lot of stories say that she was the daughter of Sam Houston, but it sounds as though she may have been his granddaughter because her father was Temple Lee Houston. The tragedy happened in 1887. The senator was visiting for a political event, so he was working. And while he worked, his daughter was playing with a ball, and it rolls down the giant staircase. And when she went to retrieve it, she fell down the marble staircase. So she hits the bottom and dies because it's a marble staircase. So sad.
Yeah.
People have claimed to hear a little girl giggling and to hear a ball bouncing. Some have even seen or caught her in a photo of the staircase. During the tour that Amanda went on, their guide showed them a photo of another person on the tour that had taken a photo of that staircase. And at the top of the staircase in the mirror, there was something that just could not be explained. And Amanda and Madison tried to recreate it or to find an explanation of why something would show up in that particular mirror, but they couldn't.
No, like looking at it at first, I'm like, oh, it's probably just the top of the staircase or something like that. But like, no matter what angle we moved to, you couldn't see the piece of the staircase in the mirror. So I don't know.
So the hotel may also honor Samantha through a few of their paintings. One is on the 5th floor, and stories say that the senator paid someone to paint this shortly after her death. The painting is of a little girl holding flowers and a letter. Some believe that she communicates through it or that her expression changes. Others feel uneasy and dizzy around it, or even have the feeling of that they're levitating. We also did see some sources that say this painting actually isn't Samantha, and it's called Love Letters, and it's by Charles Garland, but it's a replica of the original painting, not the original. And that since the girl in the painting looks similar to Samantha, that may be why the hotel purchased it and hung it up. Or just how the rumor had got started in the first place that it was her, right? Is that they're like, oh, it looks like this girl, that's why.
Mm-hmm.
Either way, some paranormal investigators believe that Samantha has ties to the painting now. So although she may not have before, she does now.
Tulpa.
When you search Love Letters painting, many places online deem it to be a haunted painting, which is interesting. And we've covered those in our cryptid episodes, our original ones.
Yes. I wonder if it's because collectively all these people were either told or suspected that it was Samantha, that they kind of created that Samantha's tied to this painting.
Yeah, it could be.
Right? But to really put it back to Samantha, and what might be my favorite paintings in the hotel are actually in the lobby. And there's 2 large paintings. One is a bunch of nicely dressed people around an old phone, and the other is what looks like a fancy party of sorts. When I took the ghost tour, there's a reason to believe that these paintings may involve Samantha in 2 different ways. And I don't want to give it away because I learned it on the tour and I couldn't find anything online, especially about these. So I want you to take the tour. But the second painting had me tear up a little. I was like, this is so sweet. So take the tour, you'll learn. Now we're going to move on to another spirit. And this one's a lot different than a lot of spirits that we've talked about before. And this is the spirit of a cowboy that absolutely loves to hang out with female musicians. So from how people describe him, he is wearing a 19th century cowboy outfit and usually smoking a cigar. Guests have also claimed to be randomly hit by cigar smoke when no one else is around. And a lot of people speculate maybe it's this cowboy guy, but also it could be the original owner, Driskill, because he also loved cigars. So I know we love phantom cigar smoke. We talk about it a lot in these old hotels.
I love a ghost smell.
Now, these next 2 stories about this cowboy guy, though, is very different. So
Yeah.
Annie Lennox, former Eurythmics member, has told her story of the Driskill involving this spirit.
Did she have some sweet dreams there? Were they made of this?
I was a little confused why everyone says it's the cowboy, but everyone says it's the cowboy. So
Okay.
the reason might come in our next story after this one. But anyways, she was on tour and she had no idea what she wanted to wear on stage that night. So she did what a lot of us have done, and she laid out 2 of her top contenders, which were 2 dresses, on her bed while she went to shower and think about it more, right? When she returned, one dress was put away. So he's like, this is the one you're wearing.
I don't know if I'd like that or not. I think I would be like, thanks, ghost stylist.
Right? I think that's a new thing that we need as a ghost stylist.
Yeah.
But again, I was like, why is this the cowboy specifically? But the reason is from our next story, you'll see that this guy really likes female musicians.
I also just would like to think that this is bride number 2 and that like she's a professional shopper. You know, she's like, nope, looks better on you. You should wear this one.
That's
right? Like
true.
That's what I would imagine. But so Jeanette Napolitano from Concrete Blonde stayed at the Driskill in the early 90s while on tour opening for Sting. From her stay, she wrote a song called Ghost of a Texas Ladies Man about her experience with a ghost. He seemed like a perv. And in an interview, she said, there's a horny ghost there that goes for women. I want to see you naked. That was the vibe. The minute I took my clothes off, I felt like something was watching me.
Ugh.
She also mentioned that he kept turning the lights off and on, so she just unplugged her lamp. She was like, fucking enough of this. So then he moved to the closet light and opened the closet door. So she said, while in bed, I know you're here, but I know that you're not going to hurt me, so I'm going to sleep now.
She was like, enough of this.
She's like, ugh. She said that she felt like he was just playing and she called him a rascal. So she wrote the song and said she was inspired to write something funny. So some of the lyrics were, I saw a face in the shower door. A cowboy smile came and faded. I reached for my towel on the floor. I didn't think it was exactly where I laid it. Which I do like that she was just like, you're kind of being like a pervy little rascal, but I'll be fine. Just please let me sleep.
Right? And yeah, I'd never heard of the song before. So I watched the music video. It's very like Texas-y. But she also goes on to say like he was a ghost of a Texas ladies man. And I reached to turn out the light and he wouldn't let me get near it. And it just goes on and on. But she talks about the spirit, about how he's floating in the air above her bed. Super weird, but
maybe that's a new
funny.
Like rabbit hole that we need to go down is like ghost songs.
Yeah.
Like who they're written about. That'd be interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So at night, some visitors have also seen the spirit of Mrs. Bridges. She was one of the employees who worked at the hotel at the front desk in the early 1900s. Although she didn't die at the hotel, people see her. Apparently, she's still working. You know how I feel about this. Do not work for free in the afterlife. But people have seen her leave the vault in the lobby and walk to the middle of the room, which is where the hotel front desk used to be. She's wearing old clothing, so she stands out. And guests also tend to smell roses when she's around, as she loved to direct the placement of the flower arrangements while she worked. Which I feel like some of the ghost stories, I'm like, what if she was the person who put her head under the straw because that person smelled roses? You know, like...
That's what I thought. I was like, or maybe she went in there.
Mm-hmm.
Like she's like, none of this.
She was like shooing her out. She's like, you can't do this to people.
Yeah.
Have you no decorum?
Right. I like the thought of her, though.
Me too. But not that she's still working.
Not that she's still working, but there's more, too, on the tour that they talk about her that I loved. So the next spirit, supposedly in the hotel, is Jesse Driskill himself. And outside of the cigar smoke being linked to him, several guests have also had run-ins with him. And it's easy to know it's him because there's a giant painting of him. So one guest who was a consultant was staying in the hotel, and they were staying in what would have been Driskill's favorite room. And he woke up around 3 a.m. and he saw a man in his room standing looking out the window. When he sat up in bed, he said, "Hey, fella, what the hell are you doing in my room?" Again, it wouldn't be that casual. It would be shrieks, right?
Yeah.
And the way that they described it is the man at the window gave him a look like, "Your room?"
I like it.
What do you mean, right? So then the consultant turned to turn on the light next to him. And when he looked back, the man was gone. But the curtain was still moving a bit, and there was a cloud of cigar smoke.
Oh.
Yeah. Weird.
Mm-hmm.
There's also a rumor that he is fond of women, so he's more likely to appear to them.
I love that the political history here is like women can't be in some of the rooms, but our ghosts sure love them.
Right.
Like,
yeah. Wild. So remember how we said President Johnson loved this hotel? Well, some guests have said that they've seen a glimpse of him in the mirror reflections in one of the ballrooms.
Who knows what he looks like just off the off the fucking cuff?
I thought of that same thing. I was like, I cannot tell you what Johnson looks like.
I couldn't tell you a single fucking descriptor of this man. Lyndon, you keep going. I'm going to Google what he looks like.
So it must be history buffs that are seeing this, but
I guess, or like closer to that. Oh my God, he just looks like a dude.
Right? Apparently, both him and his wife have been seen out of the corner of people's eyes. And I even put, I don't think I would know who I was looking at that quick, but I mean, it is interesting that they're like, yep, that's who I saw in the mirror, even though it was out of the corner of their eye and very quick, but it was Johnson and his wife.
Yeah, they both just look like
people.
Insert politician.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So history buffs.
Yeah.
Go look. See if you can find him. So there's also the spirit of a man named Peter J. Lawless. And I couldn't find much about him other than he lived in the hotel from like 1888 to possibly 1916 or 17. And he even lived there when it was closed. Like he had his own key to come in.
Did everybody know he had his own key? Is he like hiding?
I assume so. And the only description I can find of him is that he was a railroad man.
Okay. Was he Thomas the Train?
Yeah, Thomas the Train haunts this hotel. So,
choo choo.
Nope.
My worst joke.
So, yeah, like I said, he lived there when like it was closed. So thinking about that, he would live there when there was like no other staff. And supposedly people will see him on the 5th floor by the elevators. And people that see him say that when the elevator doors open, they see a man checking his pocket watch. And that's how you know it's him. Like he's checking the railroad schedule or something.
Do you think that his pocket watch has a
fish?
An engraving of a trout?
Absolutely, yes. Yes. That's all I thought of when I saw this story. So not guests, but staff have seen him walking off the elevator checking his watch, nodding at them, and then disappearing.
Love it. Just a casual, like, sup. So let's talk about some of the other spooky activity that guests have reported. While in the public restrooms, lights turn off and on when no one is around. Same thing happens in some of the guest rooms on the top floors. Elevators will go to floors without anyone in them, open, and then the door will open and it'll just close and then continue on as though someone like pushed a button there. Like it's like it should be a stop. No reason.
No reason. And honestly, I didn't know of that story until that evening when I took the tour. She mentioned it. And I was like, oh my gosh, I actually witnessed this earlier. So Madison went to the restroom in the lobby and I was sitting in these chairs and like no one was there. It was the middle of the day on a weekday. So like it was pretty empty after brunch was over. Everyone left. So I'm sitting there and the elevator door opens. So I look up because I'm like, oh, someone's coming in here. And it opens. No one's there. And then it closes and it just goes back up. And I'm like, there is no reason. I'm the only one right here. I did not press that button. So why did it come down and then open and leave? Unless someone's sitting there pressing a bunch of buttons. I don't know.
What I think is interesting is that how many times in your life have you been on an elevator and that happened and you just were like, okay, something weird, and like didn't register it? Like that has happened dozens of times in my life, easily. And I've never been like, maybe it's a ghost. But it's interesting that here they're like, maybe it's a ghost. Like people are actually noticing it with enough regularity. I'd be interested if other haunted hotels with elevators experience something similar that just aren't keeping track of it because it's not like a typical thing people look out for. Also, during some of the renovations and fixes, some construction workers have told stories about their tools being misplaced, hearing footsteps when no one was around, and seeing faces appearing in mirrors. One worker even quit after seeing two transparent people walking towards them. I could absolutely be like, you know what?
He's like, I've had enough.
I'm done for today. I'm done forever. I'm not coming back here. Like, good fucking day. Also, some guests have called the front desk in the middle of the night because they felt like they were pushed out of their beds by something unknown. And just like, could you imagine? Like, well, first off, let's start with something pushes you out of bed, right? I can, with absolute certainty, tell you that in my top 5 reactions, none of them include calling the front desk, right? I'm not like, well, I want to talk to someone about this, right? Like, I don't assume that it was an employee that came in and pushed me out of my bed, right? Like, I'm just never going to assume that.
I would never talk about it with like an employee. I'd be like, oh, someone pushed me out of bed. I'm going to tell you about it.
Yeah, well, I might be like, is it possible that somebody else has a key to this room, right? But that's going to be like, well, after I've screamed about it, I've left the room, and I also wouldn't be calling the front desk. I'd be walking myself down there and be like, I'm sorry, this happened. Is this normal? It also absolutely would not be a call.
Right.
I would just skitter on down, right? To be like, hi, other person. If I was by myself, hi, other person, can you explain?
They're like, well, a lot of people get pushed out of their bed in that room.
Yeah, I'm like, do they look at the guests that are coming in? They're like, you could withstand a fall from the bed? Like, lawyer Lindsay says, like, liability-wise, that sounds like a nightmare.
No, even better. If someone's rude to them at check-in.
Oh my fucking God. That is an absolute, like, top-tier idea. Like, don't be rude to fucking hotel concierge people.
Yes.
Because they will put you in the violently haunted room.
Yep. And you're going to get thrown out of bed.
Well, also, like, in that same vein, though, like, if you are staying at, like, a haunted hotel, and whether you're staying in a room that is known to be haunted or not, we've talked about this before, but, like, typically it's a property-specific ghost. It could go to other rooms. So if they happen to like the employees and they don't fucking like you,
yep.
I mean, that's not going to go well.
Nope.
And then also, like the Elms Hotel, some guests have reported their furniture having been moved around during the night, which again, I don't love that. I could handle it better if I woke up and it was just move versus hearing it move.
Yes.
Yeah, that would fuck me up. But this is a fun one.
Yeah. So, with all of that information, including people being thrown out of their beds, would you stay the night at the Driskill?
I think I still would. Sounds cool.
For sure. So, I've already planned next time I go to visit Madison that we need to stay a night there so we can look around more. But if you have any spooky places that you want us to cover, please let us know. I think this is one of my favorite series that we do because then it gives me road trip ideas, right? So I'm like, oh, where am I going next?
Yeah. It also doesn't have to be a hotel necessarily. It could be a cemetery. It could be a restaurant, a coffee shop, a park. I'm just naming places now. People know what places are. I don't need to explain what that word means.
We've talked about a haunted park before. We've done that.
Yeah.
It exists.
Uh-huh.
And even on that tour that I'm telling everyone should go on because it's actually very, very good. They go to a specific restaurant. I'm not going to name it, but very creepy, very interesting history.
Love it.
Also, if you are loving the show, hopefully you are, please take the time to leave us a review. We would thank you so much by sending you a sticker. It helps people find our show. So it helps us grow and it helps us come up in a lot of searches. So we really, truly appreciate the people that take the time to leave us reviews.
We really do.
It makes our day.
It does. Does.
Another thing that really makes our day and gets us really excited is when people send us stories for our podiversary, which is also coming up in October. So spooky time. It's spooky season. I declared it officially spooky season a while ago.
Yeah. July 5th, it's spooky season, right?
Yeah.
It's the last holiday before. And I mean, who doesn't want to become a podcaster?
Exactly. Have you ever wanted to be on a podcast? Here is your chance.
Yeah.
You can send us a story written out, or you can record yourself, and we'd be happy to help edit if you mess up at all. But head to our website, truecreeps.com, look at submit your story. And if you have anything creepy, a bizarre story, a run-in with someone that is creepy, or if you have permission from like a family member or friend to tell their story, we would love to hear it. You also can remain anonymous if you like work at one of these spooky places that doesn't want you talking about it and you want to tell us about it. I would love it. Please tell us.
Yeah. Even if they don't necessarily have a policy, you just don't want to be saying something and get in trouble. You can also just say, I work at a place that is haunted.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Please.
Yeah. So send us your story so we can make you a podcaster. And with that, have a great weekend.
Thanks for creeping with us.
Thanks for listening. And as always, a special thank you to our patrons who support us via Patreon. Please see the link in our show notes to learn more about how you, yes you, can begin to haunt the dump, guard vortexes, or even become a scorching Sasquatch. Ooh. Also in our show notes, you can find the link to our website, more information on our sources, our social media handles, and our merch store. We'd love for you to keep creeping with us. So if you like this episode, please subscribe, rate, review, and share the show with your fellow creeps and or ghosts. I beg of you.
Speck is also screaming in the background. I don't know if you hear him.
I don't hear him.
Okay. Just in case. It's his birthday today, too. So lots of dog stuff happening in the house today.
Happy birthday, Speck. So the hotel may also monitor Samantha.
Not monitor.
I know. The hotel may also why do I keep doing that? The hotel may also honor Samantha through a few of their paintings. Jeanette Napolitano from Concrete Blonde stayed at the I said Jeanette.
You said Johanna, I thought.
No, I said Jeanette.
Oh, all right.
While on tour, opening for Spring.
For Sting, not Spring.
I said Sting.
No.
Postscript. Okay, I did say Spring, but I definitely said Jeanette. Albeit weird, but Jeanette. Here, listen to it like 6 more times. Jeanette.